Hey everyone, it's Anthony from Pretty Printer here. In today's video, I'll be talking about how to use alternative tokens in Flask-Login. So alternative tokens can be thought of as a separate user ID for your users. So the default way of identifying users in Flask-Login is by using the user ID column in the database. But the thing about this user ID column is you normally don't want the user IDs exposed to the user. So if this user ID gets saved in the cookie in the instance of, say, remember me functionality being used, then the user will be able to decode that cookie and see what the user ID is. And that's not something that you always want. Also, if you want to invalidate a cookie from the server side for any reason, the only way you can do it is by changing the user ID. And normally that's not an option because user IDs tend to be fixed. So the alternative token is a way of creating like a second user ID that's only used for Flask-Login. And it won't be a sequential number like a typical user ID. It should be something random, which I'll show you how to do in this video. So I should let you know that the example that I'm going to show you is pretty contrived, but you should be able to pick up the concept of using alternative tokens from this. And it'll be up to you to figure out how to put it in your application. But of course, if you have any questions when you are adding it to your app, just let me know and I can help you out. So I'm starting with the code that I finished with in my intro to Flask-Login video. So I'll make a few changes here to get it to work, and you'll see how alternative tokens can be used. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of things. I'm going to add a getID method to my user model, and then I'm also going to add changes to the load user function here. So first, let me update my user model. First thing I want to do is add a session token. So the alternative token, I'll call it session token. And it's going to be a column. It's going to be a string. I'm not exactly sure how many characters will be used in this random string that I'll be generating. So I'll just put a large number. I probably should have looked into that before the video, but it's pretty easy to figure out if you look into it. I'll be using it's dangerous, and you'll be able to figure out how many characters you need to allocate space for. So I have the session token, and I'm also going to add this getID method. So by including the user mixin in this user class, it automatically adds a getID method that Flask-Login uses to kind of map users to the rows in a database. But if you're using alternative tokens, you have to do this yourself because it's based off the user ID. And it's pretty simple. Return a Unicode version of the session token. And I'm using Unicode because I don't know if it's going to be Unicode or bytes when it comes out of the database. So just to be sure, I'll cast it manually. And then in the load user function, instead of getting the user by user ID, I'll change this to use the session token. So instead of taking in a user ID, it's going to take in a session token. And then instead of this query just getting by user ID, the query will filter by the session token, and it will give me the first result. And since session token is supposed to be unique, I should only get one result if it exists. So those are the two changes I had to make to the model. Now I'm going to create two functions that are going to be the contrived part of this video, just to make it simple. So I'll just write these really quick. I'll create two. I'll have one called create user. And this is just going to add a user to the database because I'll be using a fresh database here. So the username is Anthony. And you know what? I'll add a password column too, just to make things a little more clear. So db column, let's make it 30 characters as well. So username, and then password is going to be password 1. And then finally, I'll create a session token that is based off of the username and password. So to do this, I'm going to be using the library It's Dangerous, which should be included with Flask. Well, not included with Flask, but if you have Flask, then you should have It's Dangerous as well. So what I want to do is I want to import a serializer from It's Dangerous. So basically what It's Dangerous will do is it's going to take some values, and based off those values, it's going to create a random string for you. So in this case, I'll be using the username and password. And as long as I use the same username and password, I'll continue to get the same string over and over again. But if I change just one character in either that username or password, I'll get a completely different string. So this will be important in the cases where like someone changes their password then I'll update the session token using this new password. It will create a new session token. And because the session token is different than the session token that is stored in any cookie, it will automatically invalidate that cookie. So an example would be if someone went into your app and they changed their password, but they were logged in on 10 different computers. As soon as they change their password on that one computer, the other 9 tokens, or other 9 cookies, I should say, become invalidated for the remember me functionality as soon as they change their password, if this is how you want it to work. And that's a typical use case. So from It's Dangerous, I will import URL safe serializer. And I think I spelled that right. And I'll initialize it below my login stuff. So I'll say serializer, URL safe serializer. And then I'll pass in the secret key from my app. It needs a secret key. So as long as the secret key is the same and the username and password are the same, it will generate the same string. That's the whole point. So of course you need to keep your secret key secret. Don't use secret keys like mine. This is secret. Use something that's probably random, complicated, and something that no one would find out. It needs to be hidden. So I have the serializer here. And what I'll do when I create the session token is I'll call the serializer and I'll do dumps. I don't know why it's called that, but I'll pass in the username, and I'm just hard coding the values here, and I'll pass in the password, which is password 1. And in this case, like I said, this example is contrived, so I'm just hard coding everything. If you were actually doing this, you would take the username and password supplied by the user and use them in both spots, but I'm just typing it in here. So I'll add this user to the session, and then I'll commit this. So let me run this now. I'll start up Python. And first I need to create the table from, let's see, login example, import DB. And I think I'm in the wrong directory. So login example. Okay, so from login example, import DB. Takes a second. And then I'll do DB create all. And that looks like it worked. So now I'll import create user from login example, import create user. And then I'll run create user, and hopefully this works. Okay, so it looked like it worked. I'll open up the database to see if everything works. So select star from user, and I see my name, password 1, and a random string, which is exactly what I wanted. So now let me fire up the app. Python login example. And before I do that, when I log in down here, so when you go to the index, it logs in the user. I'm going to use remember equals true. So login example, it's running. And now I'll go to my server. It says I'm logged in. So now I'll go to home, and it tells me the current user is Anthony. And just to demonstrate, if I stop the server and run it again, so we see that the app is no longer running, I'll start it, and then I'll go back to home. I'm still logged in because I have that cookie that's based off the remember me functionality. So now that I have that, what I want to do is I want to update the token to invalidate that cookie that I have. So I'll create it under here, this update token. And what I'll do is I'll query for my user. So user query filter by, and then my username is Anthony. And I'll get the first result for this. And then I'm updating the session token. So serializer dot dumps, and the username will be exactly the same, but I'm going to change the password to password 2. And just for completeness, I'll change the password here, password 2, and then I'll commit this. So now when I do this, and I use password 1, so I'll save that. When I do this, so let me get out of the app, and I'll start up Python again. From login example, import update token. So I'll call update token. I'll exit. I'll open up the database to make sure everything changed. SQLite 3 login.db, select star from user. And I see my password is different, and I believe that string is different. Let me look up here if it's still around. Yeah, so let's see, 6SWK is how it ends, and this one ends 8AH4. Okay, so it's different. So now let me start up the app again. Python login example. And now when I go to the home, I shouldn't be able to see this page anymore because I'm not logged in. And this is the page that is login protected. So when I do this, it says unauthorized now. So I can no longer see what's on that page because I'm not logged in because my cookie is invalid. So if I go back to the index, I'm logged in again. If I go home, now I can see my current user. So this was a pretty simple example of how to use it. Some modifications that you would probably use, you can use a different serializer from It's Dangerous. Like I said, you might want to find out exactly what the length is for the strings that get generated. And I guess the best use case is when you want to either hide the user IDs or you want to invalidate any cookies when the user changes their password or when you just feel like invalidating cookies. One thing you can look into as well is making the session invalid after a period of time. So you can use It's Dangerous to create tokens that are valid for only like 10 days or something, however long you want it to be. But Flask-Login also has functionality for that as well, so you can use both if you want. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions about this, just let me know down in the comments and I'll answer any questions. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. So thank you for watching this video, and I will talk to you next time.